Hi everyone, I'm Marshall.
And I'm Theo.
And this is
Twin Cinema. More importantly, it's our first Theo Thursday, where we're going to review the movie that I chose for our Acid Westerns theme, El Topo. If you're new and not sure what's going on, please click here to watch our introduction, where we talk about the format of our series and our theme.
And if you want to watch the review we did of the film I picked, Deadlock, click here to be taken to the video. Alright, now Theo, before we start the review, I want to know why you picked the film El Topo.
Well, I'm a pretty big fan of Jodorowsky's other work, The Holy Mountain, and I bought this movie along with The Holy Mountain in the Jodorowsky box set, but every time I watch this movie, I seem to be both drunk and late at night, so I would fall asleep in the middle of it. I really just kind of wanted an excuse to watch this movie and to put a critical eye on it, because I really love The Holy Mountain, and this movie, I think, is a little more famous, so I wanted to see what this movie was all about.
Awesome. Well, thanks for enlightening us on that. So, we're going to do a quick synopsis of the film, then we're going to get into the meat of our review.
El Topo tells the story of the titular cowboy on his quest for enlightenment. Our hero rides into town with his son to discover the populace has been massacred. He finds out that the evil colonel is responsible. El Topo challenges the colonel to a duel, and El Topo emerges as the victor. He then takes the colonel's female slave with him into the desert, leaving his son behind in the care of some monks. While in the desert, the woman, who El Topo names Mara, pushes Topo to defeat 4 masters of gunfighting so that he may be the best in the world. It doesn't matter to her, however, if he wins by skill or trickery, so he resorts to luck or deception to defeat the masters. After the first master is killed, an unnamed woman in black joins their group and begins to initiate an affair with Mara. After killing the final master, El Topo begins to feel remorse for what he has done. When he tries to ride off with Mara, she leaves him for the woman in black, and the 2 women shoot El Topo, leaving him for dead. The first part of the film ends with a group of deformed people carrying El Topo off. The second half of the film begins with El Topo waking up after many years in a cave, where the people who rescued him live. He is a changed man and vows to help the people leave the cave and join the town below. He leaves the cave with his new female partner, and they find themselves in a town that is obsessed with money. As they are working to raise money to dig the hole into the cave to free the people, they discover that El Topo's son is living in the town as a priest. When finally El Topo frees the people in the cave dwellers run into the town, only to be killed by the townspeople. Distraught over what has happened, El Topo self-immolates himself, and his girlfriend rides off with his son. Alright, so let's go ahead and start our review of El Topo. Let's start where we started our review of Deadlock and ask the question, is this a Western?
And I would say an emphatic yes. In fact, if I had to pick between Deadlock and El Topo, which one is a Western, I would definitely say El Topo, especially the story. The first part with the man trying to become a gunslinger, trying to become the best gunslinger, very indicative of a lot of different Westerns, the dueling, that sort of thing. And then also the second part where he's trying to protect this town of innocence. I think that's also very indicative of a Western. Of course, the focus is more on the personal journey and the effects of violence than a lot of other Westerns may be, but I definitely do think it's a Western-style story.
I'd agree, and also there's very much a Western setting. Mm-hmm. You have your deserts, you have these not ghost towns, but these very frontier-type towns, and the chaparral, so, the horses, all that, so everything about it is really a desert scenery, desert setting, Western-type imagery. But beyond that, there's a lot of other types of imagery. Jodorowsky uses a lot of metaphors, a lot of symbolism in his films. And, there's a lot to talk about here, and we just kind of picked some of the symbols and some of the recurring motifs of the film that we really were engaged with. One that I was really engaged with, actually, was clothing in the film. Very interesting. Whenever the movie starts, the first scene is of the father and son, El Topo and his son riding in, and they're on a horse, and the son is naked and the father is clothed. Mm-hmm. And the father is telling the son, you're a man now, bury these aspects of your childhood and become a man. And I view the child's, nakedness as saying he has no place in the world yet, right? He's learning how to be a man from his father, And as soon as El Topo gives him to the monks to become a monk, almost immediately as soon as El Topo leaves, he is in monk's robes, saying that, okay, now he has his place in the world. Likewise, when we look at the character of the general, when he is wearing his general's outfit, his men really respect him and obey him, and he has all this power. But as soon as El Topo strips him of this outfit, he loses his power, he loses his men's respect, and he is then castrated and he commits suicide.
Mm-hmm. Related to that superficiality, it's very interesting, the depiction of deformed people in this film. Now, in a lot of fiction, especially older fiction, a physical deformity is indicative of a mental or spiritual deformity, but that really isn't the case in El Topo. Especially in the first part, they have the first master who is blind, and then he has two helpers. One has legs but no arms. One is the opposite. He has arms but no legs. And so the two people without the respective limbs help each other go around, move, help each other pick up things, that sort of thing, while the blind man, kind of like Tiresias in Oedipus Rex, he's blind, but he's wise, and he uses his wisdom and his spiritual prowess to become a great gunslinger. Also, very important to that theme would be El Topo's two women partners in the film. The first part, of course, having Mara. She's very beautiful, but she's not loyal. She's very self-centered. She only cares about El Topo looking the best, not being a good person. Where his second partner, she is a little person, but she's kind, she's noble, she wants to help her people, she's willing to help El Topo achieve his goal, where Mara just kind of just stood to the side and just said, I want this, and she didn't do anything. So I definitely do appreciate how Jodorowsky didn't take the easy symbolism of deformed outside, deformed inside. Instead he said, these people, even though they may be deformed in spirit or deformed in the physical capacity or limited in their physical capacity, they are very rich in their inner body or their inner self.
Totally agree, and that's something that goes even beyond this movie. It's throughout Jodorowsky's oeuvre.
Yeah.
One recurring motif that really, hit a chord with both Marshall and I in a negative sense is the use of rape throughout the movie. For the most part, the rape is done, I think, in a pretty standard critique of violence and, assertion of power. It's usually soldiers, the bandits in the film raping the priests or the woman to assert their power and their dominance over them. And they do that in part because the general asserts his dominance over them, so they are looking for a way to assert dominance, and the only way that they see that is by raping. And basically, to me, this is a critique of rape culture, this culture of violence that will only beget more violence and cause a lot of pain and suffering. So there's that, which I think, that's a very good message that says, we should end this cycle of violence, end this cycle of inflicting pain onto other people. But then Jodorowsky does something that, to me, kind of defeats his whole purpose of that other message, because there's this scene where El Topo and Mara go out into the desert, and El Topo is able to provide for them. He's able to find eggs to eat and water to drink. Mara, on the other hand, when she tries, she's unable to do these things. So she's walking in a circle saying, nada, nada, nada. And all of a sudden, El Topo gets up and rapes her very violently. And she's able to do these things. So it's like Jodorowsky is saying, violence is bad, okay, but, women need men to force themselves on them to give them the power to do things. And
or at the very least, they need a man's essence to do things.
Which is really really problematic or really disturbing. That scene, it's just really digging this movie until that scene.
I know, it really did ruin it. Not completely, but it put a damper. Related to that is the use of money and religion. Of course, this film's very spiritual, very religious, in an aspect where the main theme of the film is finding yourself, finding your inner power, finding spirituality. But it's pretty incriminating of organized religion in the second half, where you've got this church that comes into town, and it is attractive to the wealthy elite. In fact, the symbol is a triangle with an eye in it. It looks like the Freemason symbol that's used on the American dollar bill. And it is branded on to slaves who are rounded up and forced to serve the rich congregation. And there is a scene where a black manservant is waiting on a group of white women, and they are lusting after him. He's a very handsome man. And they force themselves onto him, all the while accusing him of being the molester, of him being the rapist. When he runs away, they accuse him of raping them, and they are believed over him because they have the power, they're in the religion, and he's lynched. And it's a hard scene to watch, but it is a perfect metaphor for how the oppressors can then victimize themselves and turn the oppressed into an aggressor.
Ustedes son testigos que me besó a la fuerza. Esclavo asqueroso. ¿Cómo te atreves? ¡Agárrame, me está violando!
It made me think of the lynchings that happened in the South back at that time, but unfortunately also it's still happening to a lesser degree today.
Yeah. Very difficult scene, but it's sad that that's still such a poignant metaphor. So we've talked a little bit about the symbolism. We really just scratched the surface. The movie is very dense with it, but that's just some of the things that really jumped out at us. Overall, what did you think of the film?
Except for the Rape of Mara, I thought it is a gorgeous film, has a lot of deep philosophical meaning to it. It's very important. It's inspired. Even Hollywood films have been inspired by El Topo and other Jodorowsky's work. I definitely say you should see it. Just have that caveat of there is one very problematic scene, but it's a beautiful film otherwise.
Agreed, yeah. If it wasn't for that one scene, I would just have nothing but glowing reviews to say for this movie. It's so good, except for that one scene, and that one scene, what it's saying is so wrong. It just leaves us really sour. It really just left a sour taste in the rest of my mouth. I would say still see it. I would give that caveat though, and the good thing is, because I had watched his other movies, for example, The Holy Mountain and Santa Sangre, and I'm like, I didn't see that level of this sort of casual misogyny in that film, and it turns out I was reading more about Jodorowsky, and when he was filming The Holy Mountain is when he says he discovered feminism. So, you definitely see after this movie there's a shift in the way he treats women.
Oh, yeah. So, Theo, which do you prefer? Deadlock or El Topo?
All right, I gotta say, if it wasn't for the rape scene, I would actually say El Topo, hands down. Mm-hmm. El Topo is an experience, and it's well done. But because of that scene, it was such a negative aspect to me in the film, I'm gonna have to say Deadlock. The way that women were, the way women were acting in that film wasn't exactly positive, but I feel like the message of the film was to critique that. Whereas I don't know if that was the message of the way women were treated in El Topo. No. And I do like that Deadlock story it's tighter. It's a tighter story. It's tighter pacing.
No, I totally agree with that. I definitely prefer Deadlock. It's close to a tie, but definitely the rape scene definitely pushes Deadlock over the edge. And I do think it has a slightly more interesting story. It's also a little bit more accessible for people.
Yeah, Deadlock's a much more accessible film.
Yeah.
Definitely El Topo's a trip. You just have to lay back and go for the ride.
Pretty much. Anyway, well, thank you for watching our video. Please tell us what you think about our new way of doing films, and of course, subscribe.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys a week from tomorrow, assuming you're watching this the day it comes out, when we do our intro for our next cycle. Have a great day, everybody.